Welcome to our first Intuition AAT Advanced Synoptic Level 3 revision session. This is a dual session. For the first part of this evening session, we are going to look at a task that would be relevant for the Advanced Synoptic at Level 3, the new ADSY assessment. And then for the second part, we're going to look at a Spreadsheets task that, remember, is now covered in the separate Spreadsheets assessment. So it is no longer a combined assessment. You do two separate assessments that you book and sit independently of each other. My name is Ben Borman. I am a tutor and director at First Intuition. I am joined live this evening by a group of students on the Zoom, so they will be able to communicate with me in the chat box. If you're watching the recording, though, you are equally welcome, and I would like you to feel part of the session. Please feel free when you're doing the recording watch back to shout out at the screen, try and make it interactive and answer the questions as we are going along. As always, I'd just like to remind students, all of the tasks we cover on these synoptic revision sessions are written by First Intuition. They are not replications of the real assessment exactly, but we try to predict what could come up in as much detail as we can from the information the AAT provide around the structure of the exam. So, shall we have a look at our first task? Live guys, are you ready? In the chat box, are we all up for a bit of a look at a recap of some partnership appropriation accounts? So this features in the synoptic because it is assumed knowledge from your previous final accounts preparation unit. So that's a level 3 unit that can be retested in the synoptic. And so it is well worth brushing up on that, as well as brushing up on things like your advanced bookkeeping and your management accounting. That knowledge needed for the synoptic exam, you will not be tested on that knowledge in the spreadsheets anymore. Okay, let's have a look then. So we have got a task. It says you have been provided with the following information about a partnership. Now remember, a partnership is two or more people operating together. And when it comes to the end of a period and the partnership has either made a profit or a loss, what do we have to do with that overall profit between the individual partners, anybody? What's the concept of a partnership overall profit and its relationship to the individual partners? Any ideas in the chat box? What are we going to have to do with the overall profit to effectively say how much of it belongs to each partner? Becky's in there with some ideas. We're going to have to make some adjustments to that profit first. Some adjustments that haven't gone through the profit and loss account, but will impact on the amount of profit that's left to be shared between the partners. And you're exactly right. We're going to have to adjust that profit, first of all, for any fixed salary share, interest on capital, or interest on drawings. And then Becky or Susanna, I can see also in the chat box tonight, once we've made those adjustments to the overall profit, we can then split it between the partners in the profit share ratio. So when you get given a task like this, what you need to look for is the information you need to start, make the adjustments, and then split the profit between the partners. So you will see it says first and foremost, profit for the year 30th of April is £187,000. So 187 is the overall profit of our partnership. And if you look at a partnership appropriation, and this is something you might have to fill out on the screen, you will see it will always start with profit for the year. Now that is the total profit for the partnership before we adjust it and before we split it between the two or more partners. So step one, and remember, you would pick up marks all the way along here. You should have started by putting the 187,000 total profit into the total profit for the year. Now, before we start splitting it between the partners, we have got to make some adjustments. And you can see we're given a pro forma to follow. You're not left to your own devices here. It prompts you to say, What have we got to add to that profit? And what have we got to deduct from it? So who can tell me, based on the information we have been provided up here, what do we have to add and what do we have to deduct? Well, let's start with the add first. Which of those amounts do we have to add? Jenna, you've said add salary. Now, just be careful. We have to add them, yes, to the individual partners, but salary, remember, would actually therefore reduce the remaining profit that we split between the remaining partners. So actually, the salary is something we're going to deduct from the overall profit. Likewise, any interest on capital that they earn. Although we will add it to the individual partners, and we'll do that in a moment in the second part of the task for this evening, we would actually take that overall interest on capital and deduct it from each of the partners. Sorry, from each of the overall profit of the partnership. The only thing that we would actually add is the interest on drawings. The interest on drawings gets added to the profit of the partnership before we go about splitting it. So in the add, what we needed to do was enter interest on drawings, because effectively we are going to charge each of the partners this. And that, therefore, when we charge the partner, gets added to the overall partnership profit. Now here, and this is where you just need to look at the information, we had been given interest on drawings for the two partners, Bonnie and Clyde. Now at the moment, we are dealing with the overall profit. So what you've got to do is take the 270 and the 190. And if you've had a go at this task already, or you're following along at home now, I think you should have £460. Do we see where we got that 460 from? The 270 and the 190. And we would add that total interest on drawings to the total profit for the year. If you got the add, then the deductions, what we now deduct under the less heading, is going to be the salary and the interest on capital. But we have been given a subtotal there to total. So let's just fill that in. 187,000 to start with, plus 460 means we should have a total of 187,460. And that's what you should have there for your subtotal at that stage. Now we've got to deduct. So the first thing we would deduct from the total profit of the partnership is the salary of each partner. So yeah, exactly right, Emma. Less salary and less interest on capital. So let's first of all type in salary for each partner. And now this is where we are doing it on the combined effect on the overall partnership. So you will see up here in the information we've been given, we had got a salary for Bonnie of 7,000, a salary for Clyde of 7,500. What we need to do is deduct the total of those two, 14,500. So 14,500 is a number we deduct. Now, again, you would be using the AAT software for this, so do it in the format that they ask for, but I'm going to put it in brackets just because we're going to deduct it, and it just reminds me at the bottom that we deduct it. But do it in the format that is required to fill in the AAT's own software. The final adjustment we've got to the partnership profit is the interest on capital. So the other thing we should have deducted was the interest on capital. And remember, we're still dealing with the combined adjustments at the moment. The interest on capital was 500 for Bonnie and 430 for Clyde. Therefore, we've got a combined of £930. So what we should have done is deducted 930 from the total. And that means we can now total up. So we did have a subtotal of 187,460, but now when we deduct 14,500 and we deduct a further 930, what you should be left with is £172,030. Well done if you have got that number. 17230 is the remainder of the profit that's available to distribute. Does that make sense? Did anybody get down to 172,030 if you've had a go at this already? Becky did. Well done, Becky. If you're watching along at home, make sure you are happy with how we've got there, taking the original profit and doing the deductions of salary and interest on capital and the additions of interest on drawings. Perfect. Once you've got down to the profit that's remaining, now we can start thinking about allocating it between the partners. So when it comes to the partners, Bonnie gets 70% and Clyde gets 30%. So with our share of the residual profit, we need to share that profit out. And so when it comes to our profit share, if we're going to split it between the two partners, and again, be led by how the AAT software want you to fill this in, but I'm going to split it in the two rows here, 172,030. Do you agree that we need to take 70% of it and give to Bonnie? So the way I would personally do that on my calculator is take the 172,030 in total and multiply by 0.7. 0.7 is the same as 70%. And remember, 70% is the profit share going to Bonnie. So whichever way you've laid it out, did you get 120,421 as the profit share of the remaining profit going to Bonnie? 70%. Brilliant. Well done if you got it. If you didn't, go back and watch the recording again, dig out your notes. But remember, if you multiply a number by 0.7, that will calculate 70%. Okay, then you can tell me this time, that was the 70% share to Bonnie. If I want to work out the 30% share, what do I have to multiply the total by on my calculator to work out 30% of it? What decimal am I going to use this time? Brilliant, Jenna and Becky. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Liz. Brilliant. Fedoza and Susanna in the chat box has worked out the number for us. Fantastic, Diana. Yeah, we're going to take the 172,030. I'm just going to do it on my calculator. And apologies, I've got to use my phone tonight. My daughters have gone back to school this week, and I think they have nicked all of the calculators from my house. So apologies, I clearly know you wouldn't be allowed to use your phones in the exam. You need to take an approved calculator, but I couldn't find one this evening. But if I do 172,030 multiplied by 0.3 equals, I get, and hopefully you got, if you've done this at home, 51,609. And what it's worth doing is just confirming that that profit gets you back to the 172,030, the residual profit that you've got to share between the partners. Is everybody okay with the profit appropriation account? 3 steps to that one. Take the overall profit from the combined partnership, adjust that overall profit for the total of interest on drawings that you add back and the total salary and interest on capital that you deduct. That then works out the remaining profit, and all you then do is split that between the partners in the percentage split that you have been told. Becky, you don't have to fill out those columns. It depends on the format of the exam. And obviously that's where, be guided by the AAT software and what they ask for. Yes, in theory, you could have put those Bonnie and Clyde shares on this side, but the most important thing to do the split between the partners is actually their individual current account. Their individual current account is where we can start taking each of these numbers provided and actually allocating it in the debits and credits to the individual partners. So we can do that, and maybe as we go along, we can do it putting the other side into the columns here, just so you know where they go. Does that seem okay? Well, let's have a go at that. So over the page, we have got, on a separate sheet, we have got the current account for each partners. And this is where, if you're not used to partnership accounts, you suddenly get confused. What we're basically doing is taking a T account, debits and credits, but effectively having two separate debit columns and two separate credit columns to allocate the overall to each partner. Okay, well, let's do it in the format that we've done it already. Interest on drawings was first. So maybe this will kind of answer your question, Becky. We had 460 in total, but what we've now got to do is split that between each partner. So the 460 was actually 270 to Bonnie and 190 to Clyde. And what we would do at that point is say the 270 goes to Bonnie and the 190 goes to Clyde. My last question for that line is, which side of the current account do we record interest on drawings? Interest on drawings goes on which side, everybody? Brilliant, Christine and Kyla and others I can see in the chat box. Jenna's in there. Brilliant, Becky. Well done, Natalia. Sorry, Diane. It was the debit side. Well done, Becky. So what we need to do is now go and record on the debit side. And remember, debit side is on the left, credit side on the right, the interest on drawings. I've run out of space, but I can go into a separate row there. Here we go. And this is where we take the individual amounts. So just looking back, it was £270 for Bonnie, and it was £190 for Clyde. Does that make sense, everybody? Are we happy with that? Is that what we did? Perfect. Right, let's go to the next row. So the next thing we had were the salaries. Now the 14,500 was actually 7,000 to Bonnie and 7,500 to Clyde. So if you wanted to, you could have allocated them there to show how the numbers had been arrived at, but you really only needed to get to the 172030 in your appropriation account. More importantly, which side of our current account do we record the partners' salaries on? Partners' salaries go on the credit side. And remember, that's the opposite of interest on drawings, just like it was the opposite add versus take away. So the salaries actually increase the current account balance. This is actually a current account balance, and therefore on the credit side would increase the amount of current or capital to these partners. So the salaries, you would debit salary, it's an expense, and credit the current account. So the salaries, 7,000 going as a credit to Bonnie and 7,500 going as a credit to Clyde. Well done if you got that. The next row of our appropriation account was the interest on capital. And the interest on capital was combined 930, but it was 500 for Bonnie and 430 for Clyde. So 500 for Bonnie, 430 for Clyde, but more importantly, which side of our current account are we going to now go and record the interest on capital on? Brilliant, Anastasia, I can see. Beta's got the right answer. Kyla's in there. Jenna's in there. Natalia, I can see. Fantastic. Emma says credit. Brilliant. Yes, the credit side. So again, we need to write or type in, or you would select a drop down in the real exam using the software. Interest on capital. Always going to be a credit entry that to the current account of each partner. And this is where we allocate the individual 500 and the individual 430 to Clyde. Are we all okay with that? Everybody with me so far and happy with where we are up to? Now we've got two further things. The last thing from our profit appropriation account is the share of the residual profit. So I think it was Becky asking, we could have laid it out like this and said, of the 172,030, we are going to allocate 120,421. That's going to go to Bonnie, and the other 51,609 to Clyde. Importantly, who can tell me whether we go now and debit or credit their current account? This is more profit to them. So which side do you think we're going to allocate it on? We're going to credit the current account. So I need another row here that I can type stuff in on, but this is where we put the profit share. If it was ever a loss share would go on the other side. A loss share reduces the current account balance. A profit share actually increases it. And therefore, using the numbers that we calculated, 120,421 needs to be allocated to Bonnie. So 120,421 goes on that side. And for Clyde, their share was the 51,609. So 51,609 should have gone to Clyde. And that completes the numbers from the profit appropriation account going into the current account. Before we balance off the current account for each of Bonnie and Clyde, however, there is one other entry that we need to make. And this is something I believe students quite often miss in this kind of task, because it doesn't itself go through the profit appropriation account. Can anyone tell me what we now need to go and record? Drawings. And a few of the shrewd students amongst you are also telling me debit. Well done, Raza. Well done, Susanna. Perfect, Natalia and Becky. Yeah, we need to go and record the drawings. So the last entry before we balance up the appropriation account is to include drawings. And this is where you need to go right back to the start of the task and the information. We were told 27,000 of drawings to Bonnie and 19,000 to Clyde. So 27,000 we need to allocate to Bonnie's debit side of the current account. And for Clyde, it was 19,000. Oh, I've put an extra 0 in there. Please take your time when you are doing these. We have now entered everything we need in the current account. The last thing we need to do is balance them off. And this is where you go back to normal T account logic. You need to work out the balance that we're going to carry down. And it goes back to basic principles of T accounts. We need to total up the side that's got the biggest totals. Well, looking at the numbers so far, which side, debit or credit, does it look like will have the biggest totals? Anybody? Hopefully you can see that the credit side has got the biggest amounts on it. So that needs to be the first number we go and find. So for Bonnie, and you have to do this for each individual partner, what we need to do is go and total up their credit side. So starting with the 18,500 plus 7,000, I'm doing this on my calculator as we speak, plus 500 plus 120,421, I get 146,421. Has anybody else done that and come up with the same total for Bonnie? Well done if you have done. Now, please just remember your basic principles. If that's the total of Bonnie's credit, for us to balance the T account, we want the same total on Bonnie's debit side. So the next number I would put in is the 146,421 as the total of the debits. And then work up and say, but at the moment, we haven't got enough on the debit side to balance our T account. So far, we have only got 27,270. So we now need to work out what would the missing number be that would get the total up to 146,421. So if I just work that out on my calculator, I have worked out we need a balancing figure of 119,151. Is that what people have calculated if you've done that at home? Well done, Jenna. Well done, Becky. Can you see the logic of doing it in those step processes? A bit of back to basics with balancing T accounts there. Remember, this is the row for balance, carry down. Now, we haven't quite finished because we've got to go through exactly the same process for Clyde. Now, again, hopefully you will see that Clyde's credit column will have the biggest total. So step one, remember, work out what that total is. And remember, you include the balance brought down in your total. So start with the 14,200, add on 7,500, add on 430, and finally add in the 51,609. I get a total going in there of 73,739. Is that what people got? I just like to confirm before I go any further. I have been known to make mistakes over the years, guys. We happy with that, guys that are watching the recording at home? Is that what you've done? Have you been following me in real time? Guys in the chat box seem to be with it. Remember the second stage then. What we now have to do is take that same total and put it also on the other side. So when we balance this, we also want 73,739 to be the total on the debit side. At the moment, we have only got 19,190. So what I now need to do is work out how much more we need on the debit side as our balancing figure. And if I've done that on my calculator correctly, have you got 54,549? Is that what you got, guys? There we go. We have finished that task. I hope that has been a useful recap on profit appropriation and partnership current accounts. If you need some more guidance on that, you should be able to go back to your final accounts preparation module units and the study resources there. But it is something, as far as we've been led to believe, that can still be retested in the advanced Synoptic. So if you're preparing for your ADSY assessment in the coming week, that's something that hopefully will have helped you because it could come up. Right. I'm just going to pause for a second before we go on to part two of this evening. Part two, we're going to be looking at spreadsheets, but I need to do two things before we get there. One, I need to open Excel, and two, I'm just going to go and switch the light on. That's a sign of where we are with the weather. Although it has been brilliant sunshine, and it was when I came on air, it's actually now turning dark outside at just gone 7:30, and I'm just going to go and pop the light on. So bear with me 1 second. There we go. Hopefully, I'm in my living room, as you can see. You can now see me a bit better. Some of you might say that's not a good thing, Ben. And we will, for the rest of this evening session, have a look at a separate task on spreadsheets. If you're not staying for spreadsheets, you are more than welcome to go. I appreciate that everybody is now doing spreadsheets at a slightly different time. And if you're focusing on the Synoptic, your time is better spent going for that one. So thank you for joining if you are leaving. But if you want to stay, and if you're going to be doing the spreadsheets assessment in the near future, you are very, very welcome to stay. We're just going to spend a bit of time looking at a quick spreadsheet task. So I'll give people time. If you want to go, you can shoot. If not, you are welcome to stay, and I will keep the recording running. So we have got some instructions. It says open worksheet called task 1. Well, before that, we need to open Excel. So just bear with me because I'm going to have to flick between a couple of things here. Hold on 1 second. Let me just do something different. Let me see if I can do a dual share with you. Bear with me 1 sec, everybody. Let me just try something here. Let's just go back. If I stop sharing, maybe I can not share. Let's try that. If I share that with you, hopefully, can someone in the chat box just tell me, can you currently see task 10 marks on the screen? Can you see the task for this evening? Yeah. If I now switch to Excel, can you also now see an Excel spreadsheet on the screen? Because we're going to have to do a bit of toggling between the two, and it's something you guys are going to have to get used to. Fantastic. So we'll go that way. Right. So let's go back to the instructions first of all, then in Word. So the instruction says open worksheet called task 1 and use data validation to restrict the salary data values to only whole numbers between 0 and 250,000. I echo that. Good luck, Sina, for your spreadsheets tomorrow. Right. So if I now go into Excel, remember, the worksheets are the individual tabs along the bottom. The workbook is the whole Excel document, and you will be asked to open that on the day. The worksheets then are within that workbook, the separate tabs. And we were told to, first of all, work on task 1. It said, use data validation to restrict the salary data values to only whole numbers between 0 and 250,000. So here is the salary information. What you've got to do first is highlight all of those salaries, because all of them, we want to have the same data validation. Now, to validate it, we need to go to data at the top here. And if you can see on the screen, and apologies if it's small, I am recording. So when you get the recording, feel free to pause it, go back and zoom in a bit if you can. But can you see a little one here up at the top with a green tick on? And when I hover over it, it's called data validation. Remember, you can also use the search function up here. So if you can't find something on the day, type data validation into there, and hopefully Excel will find it for you. But it's under the data menu and then the little green tick. And when I select it, it brings up the data validation table. And data validation is basically telling Excel what entries can it and should it allow within the particular cells you are validating. Now, we were asked to do whole numbers. So the first thing we need to do in the drop down for allow is to select whole number. And then it says between. The minimum, who can remember in the chat box, what minimum did they tell us that would be the minimum data? That was the 0, Emma and Susanna. So the minimum was 0. It said between 0 and 250,000. So 250,123 is now the maximum amount that Excel should allow us to have in those cells. If I hit OK, not a lot changes, because at the moment, everything within those cells is within 0 to 250,000. But just as an experiment, if I try to type in a number, and don't do this on yours when you're doing the real exam because you can mess stuff up, but if I just try to type in a number to demonstrate to you guys, 6 with loads of zeros on, and try and hit return, can you see it says this value does not match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell? So it's a really good tool within Excel to limit what people can type into individual cells. And that has done the first part. Remember, you will be sent out answers for all of these with guided solutions when the guys send the recordings out tomorrow, so you can follow back with screenshots what we've done if there's something you need to go back over that we've covered tonight. But we're on to part B. Part B says create an error alert with the following information: title, whole numbers only, error message, whole numbers are allowed to be used in the data set. So this is now an extension of that first part, really. We have got to go back to our data validation. And so if I go back to highlight all of those cells that we validated again, and if you remember, go to data and then find the little green tick for data validation. If I bring it back up, it's remembered what we told it: allow whole numbers between 0 and 250,000. But for part B, we need to tell Excel what error alert to display if someone tries to enter a number not within those minimum maximum parameters. So you can see across here, there is now a tab for error alert. We want the style to be stop. We want it to stop. And we were told to enter an alert title, which we can just type in here. Whole numbers only is what we were asked for. So whole numbers only. And in the error message, we wanted it to say only whole numbers are allowed to be used in the data set. So again, typing in only whole numbers are allowed to be used in the data set. If I now hit OK, just to demonstrate that that has filtered through, if I now try and put in my 6 with loads of zeros, it brings up my message as the warning: whole numbers only, only whole numbers are allowed to be used in the data set. I can cancel that. It takes me back to the original number, and we have just completed part B of tonight's task. Are we okay with that? Is everybody who's listening, watching, okay with data validation and how you would then give the error message that is required? If not, go back over it. It's something that's in the syllabus. We can't say that would definitely come up in your spreadsheets assessment, but it's something that is very easy for them to include in a task, and something that I think you would feel confident knowing before you go in. But we will continue because we are against the clock as always in these revision sessions. We've got part C. Part C says check that Jamie Sparks' salary is 142,224. Highlight the cell green if yes, red if not, without using conditional formatting. So a function of Excel that you might have come across is conditional formatting, where Excel automatically changes a cell based on what you tell it to should be in there. This said not using that. So this is manual formatting. We've got to do two things. Firstly, we've got to find Jamie Sparks and check whether their salary is 142,224. So let's go down, and this is just manual. There is no shortcut to this. There is no functional formula that was required. We've just got to manually find them in the list. Can we find them? Here we go. In my spreadsheet, it is in row 44, Jamie Sparks. And Jamie Sparks's salary is 122,224. Now we were asked, is it 142,224? So can you see actually it's out? It's out by 20,000. It says highlight the cell green if yes, or red if not. What color do we need to highlight that cell? The consensus in the chat box tonight with the live guys is red. Brilliant. It is not correct. So we need to manually go and make that cell red. So I'm presuming we do it for the cell that the salary is in. Use a bit of initiative, and this is why it's marked by a real assessor. They will use a bit of common sense to say, is what you've done logical? Don't fret, just do what you think feels like the right thing to do. But if we go to that cell, I right click with my mouse, go to format cells, and then you can see we have got the ability to format the number, but we've also got the ability to format the fill. And I'm going to select fill color red. What we're going to do is manually hit OK, and that cell is now filled red. Does that make sense, everybody? So that was just using the formatting of cells to manually fill a cell red as instructed. Perfect. Okay, let's go back to the instructions. We've now done part C. Part D says innovatives, that's the name of the business that the spreadsheet task is written for, are budgeting for the expected attendee numbers and comparing to prior years. Open the worksheet called Task 2 and extend the data range to include the months of the year 2021. So if I go back to Excel, we are now moving on to worksheet number or task 2. So select in there, and you can see we've already got some data, very common in the spreadsheets task that you've already got data in the spreadsheets that you either need to add to or calculate things with. So you can see we've got dates for January all the way through to December 18, January all the way through to December 19, January all the way through to December 20. But we were asked to also put in the months for 2021. So all I'm going to do is continue that down. Now, you could manually type in January 21, February 21, but Excel is very clever. And if you come down to December 20, Excel knows these are dates. And so what you can do, and if you're in any doubt, maybe highlight 2 cells just so it gets the kind of trend that's there. So I've highlighted November and December. If I then go to the bottom right of those cells, can you see I get the little black cross? That means I can then hold the mouse down and drag it, and it will automatically copy in the next stage of the sequence going down to December 21 in row 50. Does that make sense? You could have manually typed those in. Obviously, that would have taken you more time. They're not watching you do it. They just want to make sure you've got the right bits in there. So that is what was meant by part D. Extend the data range to include the months of the year 2021. Now we've got part E. Use the forecast function to input forecast numbers for the months of 2021. Enter the numbers into column D. I think this is probably the most technical part of tonight's spreadsheet task. So you can see we've got column D with predicted numbers. And what they want us to do is say, look, using the trend that they were seeing in the numbers there, and that trend will presumably have some seasonal variations in as well, based on the amounts in each month of the year, and then probably an underlying trend each year getting progressively bigger. It would take us quite a lot of time to plot that. When you go on to level 4 AAT, if you do go on, and I hope you do, in one of the units there for management accounting, you will do some detailed trend analysis and realize you could plot this on a graph and extrapolate where that trend is going, also looking for seasonal variations within it. But Excel ain't half a clever program, and it can do it for us. What we need to do is use the forecast function. So I'm going to go into column D, and the first number we want to forecast is what we would predict the January 21 numbers to be. So in cell D39, I'm going to use a forecast formula or function. Now, when I teach Excel, I always encourage students for formulas to use the insert function feature here. Go to formulas when you're in the cell that you need the function formula in and hit insert function. And you can search for a function. I'm going to type forecast, and you can see that forecast arises at the top. If I hit OK, what Excel now does is gives me a bit of a how-to guide to structure that forecast formula. You would not be expected to type in the full functional formula yourself. Much better to use these help functions within the insert function feature. We need to tell Excel 3 things before it will forecast the amount that it's going to put into that cell D39 for January. We need to tell it X. X is the data point for which you want to predict the value. Well, the data point is actually going to be January 21. That is the X point that we want it to predict where we are going. Then we need to know the known X's and the known Y's. Well, we've just said the X is the date, and we know for the X's the previous dates that we have got data for. So what we need to do is highlight all of those dates for our known X's from B3, January 18, all the way down to B38, which was December 20. But we also know the known Y's for each of those months. The Y's are the attendees at the events. And we know from C3 what it was in January 18, all the way down to cell C38, which was what it was for December 20. Get ready for this because hopefully it works and it's going to blow your socks. When I hit OK, what Excel does is automatically calculate what it predicts the number would be for January 21 using the previous patterns that it's analyzed from those previous dates. Does that make sense, everybody? I would encourage you, if you haven't done or used that forecast function before, look for the help sheets that they will email out with the guide to doing it tomorrow. But you can also watch the recording back and see me do that again, where you can pause it. Now, what you could do is go through that process for each of the rows individually. And that would be absolutely fine. I'm going to do it one more time just so you can see it. But then for the rows below that, I'm going to show you how you can then use a kind of absolute formula to copy it down. But we'll do it one more time for the next row down, just to show you how to do it. So go to formulas, insert function, search or find the forecast function and hit OK. Now, X is the known period or point that you want to forecast for. So our X is February 21. That's the row that we need to do. And we know it's for February 21. We also know all of the other known X's. Now, be careful. We only know from December 20 back up to January 18. We don't know January 21. We've predicted it, but it's not a known quantity. So the B33 to B38 is still the same. And likewise, we know the values, the attendees, the Y's that were generated for each of those dates. So again, we want to go from C3 down to C38 for the known Y's. When I hit return, it will now generate a different number, but it's predicted what should be based on the previous trend that it's analyzed, the number of people for February 21. Now, you could continue to do it that way manually, but obviously spreadsheets, they are relatively time pressured. So if you can find a quicker way to do something, that's only going to help you in other parts of the assessment. What I would encourage you to do at the next one is to think, well, could I actually use the formula I've got there to copy down? Now, at the moment, it is finding B40. When I copy this down, I want it to do it for B41, 42, 43, all the way down. So I don't want to make my reference to B40 absolute. I want that to move down as I copy the formula down. But my references to the blocks of C3 to C38 and B3 to B38, I want those to be the same even when I copy it down further rows. So what I need to do is make that absolute. And I make row 3 absolute by putting a dollar in front of it, and also row 38 absolute by putting a dollar in front of it. And likewise, B $3, that means when I copy it down, it will stay on 3, and also 38 absolute. Oh, sorry if I'd put that in the right place between the B and the 38. You can put the absolute dollar signs in front of the B's as well, but you would have to do it in front of the 38 and the 3 to lock in those rows. Now that means when I copy this formula down, if I highlight that cell on the bottom right and get the black cross and now copy it down to my remaining rows of dates, what it will have done is copy that formula down. But if I click in any one of those formulas, you can see the reference is still C3 to C38, B3 to B38, because I have made those absolute. There we go. Hopefully that's helped you with the forecast function. But please, if that's something that you are less familiar with, you can go back and watch my recording. When they send out the link tomorrow to that, they should send you the answers to have a look at as well. It won't be a major part of the assessment, don't worry, but it's something that will fill you with confidence if you can do it, or at least are familiar with what they are asking about. Okay, we are running out of time, but we will finish the task for this evening. So let's just finish off. Hopefully we haven't got much left to do. F, G, and H. It says round up all figures for 2021 to the nearest whole number. So what I need to do here is go back into my figures from January down to December, highlight them. The best way to round them, in my opinion, would be go right click, go to format cells, and go to number. And in number, if you choose number function, you can tell Excel how many decimal places to round and therefore display those numbers to. We were asked to do it to 0 decimals. So if I hit OK, what you can see is it's rounded those numbers. And so there we go. Use round up all figures in 2021 to the nearest whole number. We've now got whole numbers displayed. Does that make sense, everybody? We happy with that? Using that function of right click, format cells, number, and then to 0 decimal places. Perfect. Okay, nearly done. 2 more though. Filter the data for January months only. So this is where we can now use the filter within Excel. If we highlight the information that we want, and so let's highlight all of this. Here we go. If I go up here to data and come across to filter, what you'll see is we get little drop downs. And we can expand those to either filter by years, and if I expand them again, by months. Now, we were asked to filter, and I'm just going to go back to the instructions, something you need to get used to, toggling between the instructions and Excel, the data for January months only. So if I go back, what I've got to do in my little filter is not select all, but open 2021 and select January, open 2020 and select January, open 2019 and select January, and finally open 2018 and select January, hit OK, and then you can see it's only showing the numbers for January. So that was highlight all of your data, go to the data tab and filter, and then use the little drop downs to tick what has been asked to be displayed. Last but by no means least for this evening, part H, show formulas for cells presented on screen. So at the moment, Excel is just showing the number, the answer. But if you wanted to trace where that answer was coming from, it might be very useful for Excel to show the formula content of a cell, not just the answer. So what I'm going to do is highlight the cells there. If you go to Formula tab, you should be able to select Show Formulas. Can we see that there? Highlight the cells, Formula at the top, and then come over here to Show Formulas. And as if by magic, Excel is now not showing me my answer for that. It's actually showing me how it was calculating the forecast. So it's now displaying the formula, not the answer. And there we go. That's done. That's indicative of a task within the spreadsheet assessment, about 10 marks worth of spreadsheet tasks there. Hopefully that's been useful to you. Hopefully it's recovered some things that you know, but maybe shown you some things that you didn't. Please, please, please look out for the guys in the AAT team who send you the recordings and send you the other information. I am back on again next week. I am doing the session again next Wednesday. So I hope you can join me again. If you are sitting your exam before then, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you and have a lovely evening, everybody.